Moin, ihr wunderbare Menschen des Interwebs. Ich begrüße euch ganz herzlich zurück zu meinem Let's Play von The Great Ace-Attorney Chronicles. Wir sind stehen geblieben bei der Summation Examination. Damit geht es jetzt weiter. Und wir müssen wieder die Juroren davon überzeugen, uns eine weitere Chance zu geben. Oder zumindest müssen wir jetzt eben beweisen, dass diese Wachsfigur sehr wohl das Double sein gewesen ist. So rum. I've known that woman for years. She'd never been accomplice to anything. It's utter nonsense to think those two would ever be conniving with one another. Oh dear, this is most troubling, but surely the waxwork the man stole has nothing to do with the coroner, is it? I have had my own problems with members of the police. I do not trust them much. I've seen no rigorous proof that this waxwork was ever inside that birdcage. It's conjecture. Accusing someone with outright evidence is not a proper job, is it? I won't have it. Somewhat unsurprisingly, it seems the introduction of this waxwork model to the proceedings has polarized opinion. Given that its face is obscured and its build in no way resembles that of the victim, I can only applaud my learned friend's temerity at suggesting it as Mr. Evans' body double. Yes, the applause is deafening, and yes, I know it seems extraordinary, but that's not the point. That's why I have a strong feeling it's actually a greater clue than anyone yet realizes. What are you thinking, Mr. Naruhodo? I can't explain why at the moment, but I feel as though there is a specific reason why it was used, why it had to be this model. Really? A reason why nothing else would do, you mean? Yes, and I'm convinced. It's something far more significant than whether or not the model looked like the victim. Well, if that's the case, we must prevent the trial from ending prematurely at all costs. Yes, agreed. I have to find a way out of this. If you're ready, counsel, you may proceed with the summation examination. Yes, my lord. Okay. Dann fangen wir hier mal mit dem guten Mann an. The order of things seems to have changed around here for some reason. I'm a copper, lad. It's a copper's discretion to bend the rules sometimes when needs must. What's wrong with that? Where do I start? I've been working at the yard for 40 old years. That's even more than I thought. We've only had a metropolitan police service in town for 70 years, you know. Of course, times have changed. The public didn't trust coppers back when I started. It was rough. We had to fight crime, and we had to fight to win the public's trust as well. And when we did, forensic science was in its infancy too, even more than it is now, and she spearheaded the revolution. Dr. Scythe, you mean? That's right, about 10 years ago now it was, when I was still a youngish bobby on the beach. That's when she started making a name for herself as a top-class coroner, and now look at her, head of the forensic investigation team, and a woman no less. Well, you won't hear me complain. It's what we all dreamed of back then, I tell you. Would you tell me without holding the gun in the air? We were all out to uphold justice, lad. Full of whim, we were. Full of whim. That's coming across loud and clear. Oh, oops, nee. Press ist jetzt Q hier. But we're only just starting to understand this case. What are you reading there, sir? The man behind those murderers on Solar Pond Street was caught in 2 days flat. That's real policing for you. That's really not relevant to this case, is it? You're wrong there. Because it was Dr. Scythe in charge of examining the bodies. And it was evidence arising from her work that led to the arrest of the scoundrel responsible. That's right. Oh, that woman is at the forefront of this country's fight against crime. The idea that she's somehow involved in this murky business is a lot of old tosh. I thought it was up to me to press the euros, not the other way around. Why would you assume that? Well, quite simply because their unsettling swindler has no relationship with the woman, does he? True, as it stands we don't know of any connection. Oh gosh, but it would be delightfully romantic if they were somehow to have a mutual interest in the waxwork. Romantic? A woman of society such as myself use everything in terms of relationships, you know? Well, you learn something new every day, even if you don't want to. One might wonder about a possible relationship between the defendant and this coroner woman. Or perhaps between the defendant and the handsome prosecutor just there. This woman may be more astute than I've been giving her credit for. If that's the woman's stance, then perhaps demonstrating some connection between the waxwork and Dr. Sipes would be enough. Yes, I agree. As soon as we have even a whiff of a connection, she will be the first to know. What sort of problems? Let's just say we have run into each other on numerous occasions while I've been performing on the street. Right, I see. Obviously, artists such as myself cannot appear on stage as we work in close proximity to our audiences, so we perform our great magic in parks, on street corners and the like. But the police use any excuse to make our lives difficult. Do you have something to say in response to that, Mr. Ottermole? Who are you calling a mess murderer? Sorry, my mistake. I got confused because I heard you look like him. I don't look anything like that man. You wanna be locked up, Sonny? Thanks, Mr. Sholmes. Perhaps we could move on. I was really wondering if you had something you wanted to add in response to what Juror number 3 just said. And clearly you do. Back in my day, back in the good old days, it wasn't like this. What was it like, sir? We worked our fingers to the bone to earn the public's trust, we did. And by Jove, we earned it! People respected us back then. Respected you? No one would have called the coroner into question in the days. A coroner's report was the hallmark of an investigation done right, especially when Dr. Courtney Stevens put her name to it. Dr. Courtney Stevens. Das ist doch der Name auf dem Autopsiebericht. Von dem Killer. Also von dem Professor. Ja, Courtney Stevens. She was the best of the best and the apple of the... hold on a minute. What are you talking about? Who's Courtney Stevens? Oh, sorry, got a bit carried away there. Stevens is Dr. Sipes' maiden name. Her maiden name? So that was before she was married. Oh, of course, yes, silly me. It's Sipes now, isn't it? Stevens. I'm sure I've seen that name somewhere recently. Anyway, the point is, those were the great days of policing, not like now. Sorry to interrupt, sir. But do you think you could change your statement to include that name? Well, yes, I don't see why not. He was Courtney Stevens back when I knew her, of course, a legendary coroner even then. Okay, das ist wichtig, das merken wir uns. Aber ich muss noch einmal kurz mit dem Rest weitermachen. Und zwar Juror Nummer 4 möchte ich ja auch noch einmal angreifen hier. But you claimed the whole instantaneous kinesis demonstration was a trick. That I did, but there's more than one way to pull a rabbit out of a hat, isn't there? Sorry? I grant you, given that this cage appeared from amidst an explosion, there'd have been no need to use a real person. But if the waxwork had been used, the culprit could at least have had the decency to make it look like the victim. I'm not sure exactly how much criminals are governed by decency. The point is, if you're going to make a claim about that waxwork being inside the birdcage, you need to give us some evidence. Without that, it's just not science. I suppose we should expect nothing less than a logical argument from a fellow of the Royal Society. But that perhaps means his mind could be changed if we manage to present suitable evidence. Evidence that the professor's waxwork was inside that birdcage. Can I produce that or not? Yep. Wir haben die Glasscherbe. Actually, I have something I would like you to see, sir. I must warn you that I firmly believe it's only wise to trust men in white coats. So given your jet black outfit, I don't mind admitting to a sense of trepidation here. Don't trust anyone in black. Looking in the mirror must be very tiring. Trying. I do have some evidence that proves the waxwork was inside that birdcage, namely... What's that? A piece of glass. Though it's unusually thick for glass. Yes, it's a piece of broken glass that we found inside the jacket of the waxwork. As you say, it's not ordinary glass though, it's very thick and clearly made for extra strength, much like the special glass that was developed for the construction of the Crystal Tower. The Crystal Tower? Holy smoke! Exactly. The centerpiece of the Great Exhibition where the very incident we are talking about took place. On the day in question, the birdcage fell from above and smashed through a window of that special glass. From whence this small piece originated, is that it? Precisely. So, what do you say? Now that clear evidence in support of the assertion has been placed before you. Well, as I said, I only trust men in white coats as a rule. However, when the reasoning is sound, it's fair to say colors shouldn't come into it. In light of what you've shown me here, yes, I feel obliged to change my position on the matter. In that case, Juror number 4, you will amend your statement now, please. The presence of that piece of glass leaves me in little doubt that the waxwork was indeed inside the birdcage. I've got to ask, why have you brought that corn into court with you? Colonel Cop, he's been growing back on the farm, picked him off on me way into town. He's a proper nibbler, he is. Yes, the nibbling seems to be taking quite a while. Maybe it could wait until after the trial? Oh, I don't like the sound of that. You need colonels at time like this. Whenever I've somewhat picked to decide, the colonels always point me in the right direction, see? You're talking about your cup of corn? Nibble, nobble, guilty, bobble, nibble, not guilty, out. 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 Perhaps it's akin to fortune-telling with flower petals like people do back home. Well, Professor Hairbrand's fate is to be decided by a cup of corn. Could you not at least wait until we've had more time to find the truth before deciding on the defendant's guilt? Oh, I don't know about that. Me time's awfully full already. Amazing. Ha 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 ha. Funny. I know it seems a little far-fetched to think that the waxwork model of the professor was in that birdcage, but on the other hand, it explains a lot. If there really is a reason why the particular waxwork had to be used as Mr. Esmond's double, we must do everything we can to make the juror understand it. The truth is, I'm sure that's the key to this, but it's the most puzzling part of it too. In that case, you should see what additional information you can glean whilst trying to change the jurors' minds. If you can read a book whilst eating a rice cracker, Mr. Naruhodo, I'm sure you can do this. Right, yes. Okay, also, ich glaube, wir müssen noch eigentlich Euro 2 und Nummer 6 clashen können. Weil wir haben doch jetzt eine Verbindung hergestellt. Those two statements clearly contradict each other. Good gracious, to whose statement do you refer, counsel? So, juror number 2. Oh gosh, me? What can I do for you? I presume that you heard what juror number 6 said in his statement. It's brought to light the maiden name of the coroner, Dr. Scythe, which in turn has revealed the connection that wasn't apparent before. Well, naturally, as a woman of society, I find such connections and relationships irresistible. But oh golly, I'm afraid I fail to see what you mean. Dr. Scythe's maiden name is Stevens, and through that name the coroner is very definitely linked to the waxwork of the killer. The defense has evidence to prove it. My goodness, evidence, you say? How utterly enthralling. Counsel, the court cannot overlook the last remark. I very much hope there is substance to your claim. Of course, my lord. I would ask the court to look at this. The evidence that clearly links Dr. Scythe to the mass murderer known as the Professor. I have here a certain autopsy report from 10 years ago. A 10-year-old autopsy report? What relevance does it have? It is, of course, from the autopsy of the person portrayed in the waxwork, the killer known as the Professor. The Professors, but the man was a capital offender, so... That's right, this is the certification of death that was drawn up after the convict's execution. The identity of the killer was never made public, so the report gives few details, but what's important is the name of the coroner who wrote it. Courtney Stevens. Oh my. It appears that the professor's autopsy was conducted by Dr. Scythe 10 years ago, and a few days ago Mr. Drebber very deliberately stole the waxwork of the professor from Madame Two-Spells. A waxwork that doesn't in fact resemble the victim, Mr. Asman, at all. And do you suppose there is some unsavory relationship between those events? Absolutely, I'm sure of it. There's no doubt in my mind that the professor's case is at the heart of a link that we have yet to uncover between Dr. Courtney Scythe and Mr. Enoch Drebber. Hidden links, mysterious connections, secret relationships. This is all most extraordinary. We are surely obliged now to explore this further. Quite right, we can't let this trial come to an end now. Not while there's this cloud of suspicion hanging over the yard's best coroner. It wasn't like this in my day, but we are still here to uphold justice in the end. Okay, it's the Professor. That what links the Swindler and... Okay, bei mir fehlen jetzt noch 2 Leute. Had my own problems. Ich denke mal, er ist noch wichtig. The presence of that piece of glass leaves me in little doubt that the waxwork was indeed inside the birdcage. Accusing someone with outright evidence is... Ah, okay. Also er... Juror Nummer 4 und Nummer 5. Those two statements clearly contradict each other. Good gracious, to whose statements do you refer, counsel? If you could put down your corn for a moment, juror number 5. Oh, you mean me? You've pointed out that it's wrong to make an accusation without evidence, but the accusation that the waxwork model was inside the second birdcage on the day in question is not without supporting evidence, as the defense demonstrated to the jurors sitting beside you. Oh, is that right? Would it be fair to say you didn't follow the argument? I don't understand much besides Colonel Cobb, to be honest. Of course you don't. If I could interject here. Please do, sir. Now that this assertion of yours about the waxwork has been backed up by some solid evidence, it would be wrong of me as a man of science not to pursue the matter further. Well, me too then. Sorry? If this brainy gentleman says he's right, then he must be. See, I wouldn't dream of going against Colonel Cobb or anyone who's got stuff in between the ears. Success. If you can call it that. Thank you, counsel, that will do. As a result of the summation examination, the jury's overall leaning has changed. 2 jurors now call guilty against 4 who call not guilty. Accordingly, the court has failed to reach a consensus at this time. And the trial must continue. We did it. Oh, well done, Mr. Naruhodo. Another wonderful victory. The waxwork of the despicable professor, used as a body double for the victim in this quite extraordinary case. I must say it's extremely hard to believe this searching could possibly be true. However, it would appear that it does at least warrant further investigation. It's the waxwork of the professor that links Mr. Drebber and Dr. Scythe. And I'm convinced that there is a special significance to that link. I don't know what you're hoping to prove, lad. I really don't. Truth, sir. By using evidence and testimony. If the court is to delve deeper into the alleged involvement of the waxwork in this case, then the prosecution calls for the owner of the model to be summoned as a witness. The owner, Madame Tuspels. I really thought that Lord Fonseeks would object to this whole line of inquiry. Very well, I concur. Make arrangements for Madame Tuspels to appear as a witness with immediate effect. Listen carefully, my learned friend. Yes? You should know that you're on the brink of opening Pandora's box. The court shall now adjourn for 45 minutes. During that time, the prosecution will summon the new witness and prepare her for taking the stand. Madame Tuspels, yes. I shall see to it at once, my lord. To be continued. Okay. Es bleibt spannend. Ich bin mal gespannt, was bei der Befragung rauskommt, weil ich bin mir jetzt auch nicht so sicher, ob unter dieser Maske so ein richtiges Gesicht eigentlich modelliert ist. Weil ja die Identität vom Professor wurde ja die ganze Zeit geheim gehalten. Also wie sollte denn Madame Tuspels dann eigentlich die wahre Identität kennen? Also woher soll sie denn wissen, wie der Professor dann wirklich ausgesehen hat? Also eigentlich müsste doch, wenn man die Maske abnehmen würde, müsste da doch kein richtiges, also kein richtig modelliertes Gesicht dann drunter zu erkennen sein, oder? Weil die Identität geheim gehalten wurde? Aber vielleicht steckt sie ja auch viel, viel tiefer drin, irgendwie. Könnte ja auch sein. Aber ich lasse mich da jetzt mal überraschen. Ich hoffe auch, dass vielleicht Kasuma dann demnächst irgendwas zu sagen hat. Das wäre eigentlich ganz toll. Und ja, wir gucken mal. Hier gibt es jetzt aber erstmal einen Cut. Ich bedanke mich ganz herzlich fürs Zusehen. Hoffe, ihr hattet Spaß. Und wenn ihr mögt, sehen wir uns sehr, sehr gerne im nächsten Part wieder. Bis dahin. Ciao.